Hello my crafty friends, this is Monica from Allsewpetite. Welcome back to my channel. In previous video I showed you how to modify the mini snap pouch pattern to create this adorable reindeer pouch. In this tutorial I'm going to show you how to sew this project because the construction method is slightly different than the original pattern. So if you want to learn how to stitch this project, keep watching. However, if you need to prepare your pattern, make sure to check out my other video. I'm going to link that video in the description box below. And now, let's get started. To begin, you will need to cut one flap from external fabric and one from your lining fabric, one front from external fabric and one from your lining fabric, one back from external fabric and one from your lining fabric. The remaining pieces are cut from non-fraying fabric and I used faux leather in various colors. So you will have to cut either 2 or 4 antlers. That depends on the thickness and stability of your fabric. So I'm using very lightweight, drapey faux leather, so I didn't want my antlers to just like be floppy. So instead of cutting 2, I've cut 4. So I'm going to double them up. So when you are cutting your antlers, make sure you cut one as normal and then one as mirror image. So when you place them right sides together, you'll see they are exactly the same. Then you will need to cut one face, 2 ears. If you are using very flimsy fabric, you can double the amount in the same way as for the antlers. This fabric is more sturdy, so I only cut 2 pieces. And lastly, you will need to cut eyes, so you have 2 of those larger pieces and 2 smaller pieces. You will need closure of your choice. I'm using metal spring press snap, but if you want, you can use magnetic snap instead. You'll need a pen or some other marking tool. Make sure it is erasable because we are going to mark the right side of the fabric. Then you'll need some snips, scissors. If like me you are using press snaps, you'll need some tools to set them in. So I have a hole puncher ready and my hand press. Then you'll need some clips or pins to hold the fabric in place. And double-sided tape or a multi-surface glue might be very useful today, so have it handy as well. First, you're going to take your flap pieces, and if you are using magnetic snap, install one part of that magnetic snap to the lining portion of your flap. If like me you are using press snap, then ignore it. We're going to install our snap once the flap is assembled. So now you can take those 2 pieces, place them right sides together, line them up and clip around all sides. Here we go. Then we're going to take this to the machine and we're going to sew the seam around the curved edge. So leave the top edge as it is. Later we're going to use this edge to turn our flap right side out. Once you've got that stitched, you're going to take scissors and trim the seam allowance to about 5 millimeters. So that's about 1/4 of an inch. If you have pinking shears, you can use pinking shears and cut your seam allowance by half. But since I forgot to prepare them, I'm just going to trim my seam allowance down, just like that. Here we go. Then you're going to turn the flap right side out. So if you have turning tools, corner shaper, that might be very useful to give yourself that nice curved edge. And next you can take this to the pressing station and press the seam nice and flat. Here we go. Then you're going to take this to the machine and top stitch along that finished seam. If, like me, you are using press snap, now it's the time to install the female part of the snap. I have a separate video tutorial in case if you need some help. Now you can take your external front panel and your face and make sure you have midpoints marked along the bottom edge. So now you can take the face piece and place it on top. You want to make sure those midpoints are aligned, just like that. Clip or pin them together. There you go. Then we're going to take this to the machine and we're going to top stitch along the edge of the face around all sides. So you're going to use about 2 millimeters and 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once you've got this stitched, then you can install the remaining part of your snap. And what I like to do is to add another detail by stitching a upside down Y, if you wish. So what I would do now is to take my pen and I would draw it on my face. So I would just mark a little Y upside down, and then I'm going to take this to the machine and stitch that using a contrasting thread. Once you've got this ready, then you can take your flap, snap it in place. This will allow you to adjust the position of the eye. So now you're going to take those two larger pieces and place them on top. So you're going to place them right side facing up, adjust them however you want. So depending on the shape of your eye, you may have them more here. I decided to go for this version in this tutorial. So I think I like them like this. So next, what I like to do is to take a glue and just dab a little bit of glue on the back of the fabric, just to hold it in place, because I don't want to use any pins for this step. So instead, I take some glue, or if you want, you can use double-sided tape as well. So I'm going to just press that with my fingers to stick it to the fabric. I'll do that on the other eye as well. So I'm only putting some glue just in the center, since we're going to top stitch this in the next step. I don't want to have a glue around those edges. Here we go. So next you can take this to the machine, and similarly to the face, you're going to top stitch along all sides. And then we're going to repeat the steps for the smaller portion. So next you're going to take your smaller eyes, align them on top. Again, if you want to glue them in place or use double-sided tape. And then take this to the machine and top stitch around all sides. If you want to have a nice and neat top stitching, leave long thread tails, then pull them to the back of the fabric and tie a knot to secure them in place. Okay, you can cut the excess thread, and then what I like to do is to dab a little bit of glue on those knots to prevent them from unraveling. Next, you can work on your antlers or your ears, depending if you cut 2 or 4 pieces. So you're only going to work on those pieces where you cut 4 of each. So I'm going to place those ears aside because I don't have to do anything to them. And next, we're going to place the antlers wrong sides together. So you want to make sure you match them up just like that. So wrong sides facing each other. You're going to line up the edges, then take this to the machine and top stitch around all sides. So again, I want to prevent the fabric from shifting, so I'm going to add a little bit of glue on the back of the fabric, just in the center. Here we go. Then I can place that on top, line up the edges and stitch them together. If you have any uneven edges, just take scissors and trim them down. Once you have those antlers and ears ready, you're going to take your external back panel, and what I typically do is to measure about 1.5–2 centimeters from the side edge. That depends on your seam allowance. So my seam allowance is about 12 millimeters, half an inch. So you want to make sure that you place your antler inside, so beyond the seam allowance. So let me show you what I mean. So my seam allowance is 12 millimeters, half an inch. So it goes up to here. So I have to make sure that I place my antlers and my ears beyond that place here, because here is that seam allowance. So don't place it too close to the edge. You want to place it beyond the seam allowance, just like that. So if you need to measure your seam allowance on both sides and just make a little notch just to be safe. Otherwise, you can measure a specific distance from the corner. So let's say I'm going to measure 2 centimeters on one side and then 2 centimeters on the other side. Here you go. And this way I can place my antler at the notch, clip that in place. So right side is facing up. You want to do that on both sides. Just like that. Next, you're going to take your ears and place them inside next to those antlers. But to give me more of a 3D effect, more of a texture and volume, what I like to do is to fold the sides onto itself. So right side is facing each other and I fold my ears like this. And then I can line up that ear next to my antler and clip it in place. So if you want to take this to the machine beforehand and base those edges, you can, or just clip that like this. So I'm going to do that on the other side as well. Here we go. Then you can take this to the machine and baste everything together. If you want, you can take your flap now and place it on top as well. So lining side is facing up. You would match the midpoints, line up the edges, and then baste your flap in place as well. But sometimes I found it is very difficult to sew the side seams, so I prefer to add my flap at the later stage. Instead, you can take your external front, place it on top, so right sides are facing each other, line up the edges and clip everything together. So make sure your antlers, your ears are out of the way. You don't want to clip them by accident. Here we go. Then you can take this to the machine and sew the seam. So leave the top edge as it is. You don't want to stitch the top edge. You are only stitching around the curve. Once you've got that seam stitched, you can take scissors or your pinking shears and trim the seam allowance by half. Now you can take your flap and place it inside. So remember, the right side of the flap is facing the external back panel. You want to match your notches, align the top edge and clip everything together. Here we go. So next you can take this to the machine and baste the flap to the back panel. Once you've got that basted, you can place this aside for a second, then take your lining pieces and repeat the steps. So you're going to line up the edges and clip them together. Now you can take this to the machine and sew the seam, but remember to leave an opening somewhere around the bottom edge, so later we can turn the pouch right side out. So what I like to do is to mark a couple of notches so I don't forget it. So next you can take scissors and again trim the seam allowance by half. But what I usually do is to leave the full seam allowance around that opening. There we go. Then you can turn the lining right side out, just like that. Take your external pouch, place the lining inside, so make sure the front is matching the front, the back is matching the back. You want to place your lining inside, line up the side seams, line up the top edge and clip everything together. Then when you are ready, take this to the machine and sew the seam. When you have the top edge stitched, pull out the lining, and then using the opening in the lining, you can turn the pouch right side out. You may want to use your corner shaper or other tools to just push the seam. Here we go. Then you can take this to the pressing station and press the seam nice and flat. Then you're going to bring the lining inside. Just like that. And again, press the edge nice and flat. Okay, when you are happy with everything, take this to the machine and top stitch along that finished seam. So what you can do is to turn the pouch inside out. This way you can lay it on the bed of the machine and top stitch along the seam, just like that. Then you can separate those external and lining pieces and close the opening in the lining. So what you want to do is to fold the edges with wrong sides together by the seam allowance. You've previously stitched the side seams. Line up those folded edges. You can clip them or pin them together. And either use a hand needle and a thread and close the opening by hand, or take this to the machine and stitch close to that edge. Just like that. Next you can insert the lining back into your pouch. I like to use my corner shaper to just push the seams so they are nice and flat. Here we go. If you have to, give your pouch a final press. Otherwise, your reindeer pouch is now finished. Well done. If you enjoyed this tutorial, let me know in the comment section. And if you would like to see similar videos from me in the future, make sure to subscribe to my channel. See you next time. Stay crafty, friends. Bye.